Here's Johnny.
I'll be back.
And you will know my name is the Lord. I'm walking here. I'm walking here.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Groovy.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Box Office Pulp, your one podcast stop for movies, madness, and moxie. On today's episode, we're all going to ugly cry into our microphones for 45 minutes as we think about Michael Rooker and our fathers. We might even say a few things about Marvel Studios' latest film, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Joining me today are my three stalwart co-hosts. I'm having a hell of a time saying co-host, but I'm just going to go with that reading. If there are two types of beings in the universe, there are those who dance and those who are Mike. We happen to have Mike.
You're also ugly on the inside, Cody.
It's very true. Next up, we're making some weird shit. Get ready for an 800-foot statue of Pac-Man with Skeletor and James Lewis.
I'm gold.
Delightful. And lastly,
Iron Man B.
he hates hats.
Iron Man B?
On anyone, not just himself.
Iron Man B.
You see someone and think they have a weird head, and that just turns out part of their head is a hat. That's why you don't like hats?
Iron Man B.
Oh! And I'm Mary Poppins, y'all.
You suddenly remembered.
Suddenly remembered.
Also, I'm so glad that you did not go with, and here's James, whose poop is famously big.
It was notoriously large turds. Is that true? We're going to get into the real meat of the podcast now. James, how big would you rate your turds? Like, are they exceptional?
I'm out of here.
I don't like that. No, Cody, I don't like this anymore.
Iron Man B.
Well, now I'm out of material. We can't talk turd size.
Also, Cody, turn up your game just a tinge.
Oh, boy. Hold on.
Are you pulling levers to create Frankenstein over there?
I knocked over my speaker.
No, you're much lower.
Sounds like you're across the room.
Oh, God. How about now?
It's exactly the same. Did you unplug something accidentally?
Oh, Jesus. Ah.
Do I have to lead this in now?
Please.
God damn it.
We're going to hear sounds of a fire, aren't we?
No, I accidentally turned up the volume very high on my headset, so that was frustrating. Do I sound any better now?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're deaf now, but yeah.
I'm deaf. That's...
This is a terrible start.
Don't keep any of this part in. We had an okay intro.
Oh my God.
Is this in the spirit of Guardians, though?
No.
No.
I mean, people are
but they get the
crying
job
right
done.
now, but...
Yes. Let's actually get to the matter at hand here. I'm assuming we all loved Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Or do we have any dissenters? Is there anyone who needs to be banished from the show?
I have no soul.
MB, you did not enjoy Guardians 2.
Actually, I did. I loved it.
Okay. All right.
It would be amazing if MB just threw down on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
And I have this to say about Mantis.
I have never been disrespected by a film more in my life.
This film ruined my life.
And I just would have been amazed. Like, it would have given us plenty to talk about, but I would have just, like, had my head blown.
Well, that's not the case, though, so ignore the alternate reality version of this episode.
Wonderful. I actually watched the movie a second time today. And the first time I enjoyed it. Hands down, really enjoyed it. But the second time I watched it, I realized how much I just loved the movie. Like, legitimately thought it was everything you could ask for in a big-budget blockbuster movie. Like, there's big fun action. It's funny. It's entertaining. Great soundtrack. It has some things to say. It's a little bit emotional. The effects are great. Really, I don't know what more you could ask for a popcorn flick.
Now, when you say it's a little emotional...
and I underplay that. Basically, like, the second you get into everything at the end, even the second time around, I just felt like someone was just emotionally assaulting me.
It's nonstop.
It lets up a little bit, actually, and then they get to the Ravager funeral, and it's like, oh, nope, oh, there's the knife again.
The movie ends on a close-up of Rocket crying.
It does, yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's even underselling it to call it a popcorn film, because I'm not entirely into the camp that this is superior to the original, but I feel like you take home more with this film than the original. While it may not exactly stand shoulder to shoulder with the filmmaking of the first, I feel like there's a substantial amount of surface here. Like, this movie sticks to your ribs in a way that not only, like, the first one didn't quite, but, like, I can't think of a Marvel movie that stayed with me after watching it this much.
I'm of a different camp where it stuck with me, but a lot of Marvel movies have. This one specifically, though, what it gets to is that the first Guardians of the Galaxy for me was just kind of a tour around the galaxy as we know it. I mean, literally, it's a tour of the Marvel cosmic space, and it's kind of the introduction of all these characters is the formation of the team. It's how they meet and what their arcs are in that movie from kind of beginning to end, and then they just kind of go off and they set up for their adventures. This is a character piece. This is one, like, almost a singular character piece about the team, not just, okay, this is just the Star-Lord movie. No, this is just the Rocket movie. No, this is just the Gamora movie. This is about the Guardians as a singular unit and how they function together or don't function at all. And it's about family in so many different ways that I would say even Vin Diesel would be envious of.
I'll say, and I'm curious if you felt this as well. Do you feel like this is everything you wanted Avengers 2 to be?
This is, I kind of feel like what Avengers 2 was promised to us.
Yes.
Because Whedon made a lot of comments saying that he was going to go smaller and he wanted to go more intimate. And I really feel like that's the case here. I mean, we do still have Ego trying to destroy the galaxy and lots of big effect shots and all that kind of stuff. But for all of that, I feel like Gunn really wanted to get more into these characters instead of having, 30,000 spaceships fighting 30,000 other spaceships. Well, there's ground battles and hand-to-hand combat and blah, 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 blah.
I think, like, when I think it's almost unfair to say it's not as good as the first movie, even though I do agree with that. That's what I think as well, because they're both very different types of movie.
Exactly, yeah.
And they kind of the quote-unquote step down from the first movie is actually Volume 2's greatest strength. And I appreciate the balls on Gunn to structure this film more like a 90s indie film.
Yeah.
It's a pure character exploration of all the characters, of the concept of the team itself as if it was one character, without really any kind of plot. Going into it, everyone's idea was that it's like, oh, Aisha's the villain and then Ego's there and blah, 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 and they have to do some Guardians of the Galaxy shit. This is them just kind of doing stuff until the third act starts, and not in like a bad meandering plot kind of way. The plot is what the characters are going through and what they're doing and how they're reacting, and the themes of the movie are the plot, and then it kind of comes to a head in the third act.
I think some people are frustrated because,
so.
And I mean, I'm just speaking for them. They're not on the show to defend themselves, so I can just make up what they think. They probably believe in stupid things. But I think
the Holocaust was real, fictional person.
Yeah,
I don't care what you say.
Get your shit together. I think a lot of people are complaining because for a large portion of the movie, Star-Lord is essentially sidelined. He's not given physical action to do, which makes it seem like he has nothing going on. But he has a very emotional deal going where, he meets his father finally, and he has to figure out how that works for him. So emotionally, he's got so much on his plate, but that doesn't entertain audiences the same way as, like, seeing Peter Quill fly around fighting multi-dimensional tentacle beasts.
Yeah.
I will say that actually is kind of my biggest gripe with the movie, is that I feel like the second act indulges a little bit too much in the pace of it, in that it kind of goes a little too far into more of a slowed down pace, because mostly when they go to the actual Ego planet and they're actually on there, it feels like an entire other movie is kind of sandwiched in between the first and second acts.
Well, there's such a big subplot difference between what Rocket and Yondu are doing compared to what the rest of the Guardians are doing. And considering they spent so much time in the first movie building these characters up so they have to work together,
I feel like
this movie they spend all their time separate.
Immediately separate,
yeah.
Well, I feel like that's an aspect of it, but I also feel like just in comparing it to the first movie, because it's impossible not to do. I mean, it's called Volume 2, and like I do agree that they are two completely different films, but the first one had such an immense, like much more immense sense of scope, because like I said, it was a tour of the galaxy. It was, you went to different planets, you went to different systems, you went to you saw all this different sort of alien life. And it was almost like every scene took place on a new planet. You felt like you were getting a gigantic, like, cosmic experience. With this, it's much more subdued and much more restrained to focus on the character work. And that was really kind of that was kind of what took it down from the first one, because the first one felt so immense and such a breadth of something. Like it was a Star Wars. This is more like, it's almost hard to describe what this is like, because I don't think I've seen anything quite like this in terms of, like, this is just a ballsy movie.
This is Woody Allen's Star Wars.
See, that's actually kind of my complaint in the first movie, MB. I think it hits too many places, considering it has to introduce all the characters and all these locations. I think I even mentioned this in our original episode for Guardians of the Galaxy. Promotion! It just feels like there's not enough time given to the characters, because they have to have so much they cover and so much world building. In this one, they can kind of sit back a little bit and go, okay, people understand by and large the rules of this world, and we have our characters set up. Let's explore some of their conflicts now. And it allows them to break it down and be like, okay, let's pair these two together, because we can get a lot of emotional mileage on them discussing either their differences or similarities. And to me, that works fantastically. Like, I think that's why I love 2 so much. You can't really it's an apples and oranges thing, like we said, even though it's a volume 2. But I really love the choices they made on this one to try and get more character exploration done.
Well, something I've been reflecting on a lot since seeing it is something I've never really thought about until now, which is every good superhero series follows a basic structure with how the films are laid out, which is the first film introduces us to, the hero or team in question, and is all about explaining why that thing should exist. And in a good sequel, the second film is saying, okay, you know why this has to exist, but what does that mean for this to exist? Spider-Man 2 did that brilliantly. X-Men 2, Captain America Winter Soldier, all did that expertly.
The Dark Knight.
The Dark Knight, exactly. Where you see problems with stuff like Iron Man, is like Iron Man 2 just kind of did the Iron Man story a second time. It didn't really go into what Iron Man meant for that world. Avengers Age of Ultron kind of tried to do that and then gave up about halfway through. But really no other superhero movie that I can think of personifies that philosophy more than this film. Like, Guardians of the Galaxy is all about these characters coming together. Volume 2 is about, okay, they're the Guardians of the Galaxy. What does that mean exactly? What does Star-Lord leading a group of mercenaries entail? What does Rocket being on a superhero team mean to Rocket? What is Groot?
Marketing genius is what it is.
Marketing genius.
I still love how, by the way, Baby Groot was a last-minute addition to James Gunn. And that was the key that set everything going for him. I could not get into this Guardians of the Galaxy 2 until I made Groot a baby.
Can I just say that I love once again, the sheer balls, Mike.
Balls.
Thank you. The sheer balls of James Gunn having Baby Groot there and having him maybe take up 5 minutes of screen time. Like, it honestly feels like he doesn't really, I feel like everyone else wanted the movie to heavily lean on him, and James Gunn said, no, that's not why I'm here. Here he is for a little bit, and here's this little cute scene, but he serves a larger purpose in my narrative. Here are the other characters I actually want to focus on. That's what I'm going to do. And it worked. I feel like that actually really
enhanced the film.
What I feel like is that the Volume 2 utilizes the characters in a way that is so laser focused compared to the first one. Because I think Cody kind of alluded to this when he was talking about his issues with the first one. One of my issues with the first film is that I felt like Star-Lord's arc in the first film, while it was carried by Chris Pratt's performance, I felt like in the script it wasn't really that well defined, because he just kind of is a thief, and then the plot with Ronan happens and he decides, I guess I have to save the universe now. Way later than anyone else comes to that conclusion, even. Like, that, to me, that's kind of jarring, and one of the only parts of the movie I don't really like.
I would argue that slightly, and we're going to go on a slight tangent here, so please remember your place.
Fight.
No, I saw an article talking about this, and it kind of turned me around, because originally I would have been on your side, but just talking about Peter's reluctance to really join into most things, supposedly tying back into the fact that he loses his mother in that first scene. So he doesn't want a team, he doesn't want any of this stuff, he just wants to get through life and without attachments. So the idea of saving the galaxy doesn't matter to him so much because they're just people he doesn't give a damn about, and he doesn't want to be emotionally hurt by being close to them anymore.
It's not the decision to save the galaxy that really bothers me, though. It's the way that it's actually executed, which is just like a light switch moment, as opposed to a gradual build-up. I felt like one scene, Peter was still in the I'm out for me and nobody else mode. The very next scene, he was like, okay, I've got to stop Ronan. I feel like that was just kind of poorly done. Whereas with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, I feel like Gunn actually like really took a lot of time and said, okay, this is where I want Rocket to be at the beginning of the movie. This is where I want Rocket to be at the end. This is where I want Yondu to be at the beginning, and this is where I want all of everyone who watches this to suffer emotionally at the end. This is where I want Drax to be. Like, he just kind of, I feel like there was like charts involved where he kind of looked at what everything was as a moving piece and just figured out what that had to be before he even wrote a word of the script. Because this feels like something that has been refined over and over and over and over again until he's got the right mix of just what these characters are doing in the movie.
I do want to point out, though, because this fascinates me, Star-Lord was totally going to destroy the universe until they found out that Ego killed his mom. And I think it's very important to never forget that in all of his upcoming appearances.
I'm going to throw this out. I don't think Star-Lord really understood what he was doing. His dad just said nice things and went, yeah, sure, whatever, Daddy. Like, he could have told him something horrible.
Peter's not very smart.
In Peter Quill's defense, though, he's lived most of his life in space. He doesn't really have the same kind of emotional, like, he doesn't have the same values that we have because he had to live as a Ravager.
He has space values. Do you know what space values are like?
Yeah, survival of the fittest.
Worth nothing.
Do you know what Yondu taught him? You know what he taught that Terran boy?
You don't even want to know the first time Peter made love.
It was
the
to
taser
us.
face, wasn't it?
Space love.
It was to a nebulous gas cloud.
Feels like I'm fucking nothing at all. Nothing at
Nothing
all.
at all.
Nothing at all.
It just turns into Sweetback.
So, before we move away too much from the differences between 1 and 2, I do have one more comment I just want to throw in, and then we can move on. I absolutely loved the kind of mission statement he presents the audience with in the credit scene, like the opening credit scene. Because we have the giant battle, the epic battle in the background between the interdimensional space monster thing trying to eat the batteries. And instead of focusing on that, we spend the entire time listening to ELO and watching Baby Groot dance around and having his own personal, intimate struggles. So
The most James Gunn thing in the world.
Yeah, there's this giant space battle that we all kind of expect is the natural, escalation from the first movie. It's like, yeah, that's there, whatever. We'll kind of get pieces of that. But I'm more interested in just seeing Baby Groot walk around, try and eat bugs and fight rats, and dance to music he enjoys.
These
and
people
that's
existing.
Yeah, I want something
There's-
emotional and small.
And there's also just something beautiful about the fact that the movie begins with them fighting the giant monster.
It's like a great James Bond kind of open. You get like that big action moment that's not really connected all that much to the rest.
We're in the third act of a normal Guardians movie, and then we just cut to this indie film, personality exploration film.
Yeah.
And what's funny about that is, like, it then it slow builds into another ramp up that you don't expect, which is this battle literally within the core of Ego for the soul of Star-Lord and the soul of the Guardians, really, because they're all. What I love about that third fight is that third act fight, I should say, is that all of them are fighting for something, and they all have a stake in it. It's not just, oh, my teammates are in trouble. It's like they each individually are like in their own little private mini struggle. Like Gamora's trying to save her sister because she's feeling bad about the fact that she abandoned Nebula to be tortured for all those years by Thanos. And meanwhile, you also have, like, Drax is running towards the ship trying to get Mantis to safety, and he's sinking, and Star-Lord is fighting Ego and having all these, like, emotional attachments just to the fact that, this is his dad, but now he has to fight him, and also he has superpowers, essentially. Like,
there are actual stakes in this third act. It is not a CGI robot battle.
Thank God.
I mean, it is giant CGI with robots, but regardless. Also,
it's well done.
The brilliance of making your villain a pure symbolic representation. Like, he's Ego. His character name is literally Ego. He represents Ego 100%. Like the classical definition of Ego. So these characters are fighting a concept, more or less. So that metaphorical idea at the end, what are they doing by taking a stand against Ego? You're standing against everything Ego is for, which is a brilliant way to talk about a team that's supposed to be defending the galaxy and being altruistic.
And I also think it's brilliant in that choice to also have Kurt Russell just become less and less of a factor in the actual Ego character, because he visually stops being Kurt Russell, like, close to the end of the second act. Like, he just kind of goes through phases of being this pure energy being.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of adds to the idea that they're fighting more of a metaphor than a character, because he's becoming less of a visual. He's becoming, like, more of a force that they have to actually fight, because they're fighting on his turf. They're fighting on his terrain. He literally is a planet. So
yeah.
they have to fight their surroundings, and they have to fight this thing that is a manifestation of the surroundings. So it's like all these different things just coming together from, like, completely different sides of the equation. It's so multifaceted, and surprisingly so.
Yeah, and on the flip side, you have the sub-villain Taserface, who even refers to himself as being a metaphorical character, which is great because he's just such a small, worth-nothing villain. And then you actually have, like, a metaphorical villain on the other side that's Ego. Or maybe the in-between character of Aisha, who is just, pure vanity and kind of continues the trend from the first film, where the villain is in a 100% different world than the rest of the characters. Like, they just don't see things the way everyone else in the world does.
I want to see Aisha and Ronan interact.
They both have their own carpets that get dragged across the snow for them.
God, I cannot wait for Volume 3 for Aisha and Adam Warlock to have gold conversations in their palace.
Presumably out of a completely different dramatic set piece that's probably going to be Shakespearean in some place, but then you just cut to Rocket farting or something.
It was a little weird in this movie how it felt like the humor jumped a few steps down in places. Like, it got more juvenile. I'm not complaining because I still laughed at dumb turd jokes, but it was kind of like, oh, that was unexpected.
I was just delighted by that kind of stuff because as with the first movie, my endless source of entertainment is in the knowledge that somewhere Captain America is doing something.
And Spider-Man is doing something, and Daredevil exists.
Is dead.
Like, Jessica Jones exists in this universe. Like, you could literally point to, like, 1,000 different characters, and it makes it more hilarious. Because it's like, wait, Iron Man is supposed to be in this? Like, Thor exists? Well, actually, Thor makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, it's always kind of delightful with the Guardians films to just see how much they can warp the Marvel tone. Because all of these movies, like, except for the Cap stuff, are action comedies. But it's fascinating to see something in that universe really lean into the comedy aspect, where it's not comedy relief, it's actual comedy with a capital C.
Also, going off of bending the Marvel brand, God, and I just have to bring this up because I love the scene so much, I'm just enthralled. When they cut to Yondu and the Ravagers on a literal sex planet.
Oh, yeah. That blew my mind.
Noir Yondu's buckling his pants next to his robo-hooker.
Trying to figure out how it all went wrong for him.
That goddamn shot, just like, that alone was worth the price of admission. Like, the music going on, the weird robot hookers, Yondu wistfully looking out with regret.
And the
scene alone. Snowy landscape as he buckles his belt.
A scene later, Sylvester Stallone shows up and dresses him down for failing the Ravagers.
God damn, that scene was so amazing. Like, I want a movie of just that. Like, the Ravagers. Like, I want Yondu to get, like, a weird prequel spin-off where it's just that shit. They don't even try and save the galaxy. It's just them doing a small heist and having weird, emotional pet peeves.
So do you agree that as Starhawk, Stallone was channeling Judge Dredd?
Oh, definitely.
Kind of the way he
That
was
he
shouting
was
is fine.
full on, you betrayed the law!
Yeah, he was. He totally was.
It was very 90s Stallone. I feel like Gunn did all of that very specifically.
Oh god, if we do see the Ravagers in a prequel, can Starhawk be played by Carl Urban?
So yeah, I'm sorry, Andy, I cut you off. We were going to go into something right before I mentioned that scene, but goddamn, I love that scene so much.
Well, that actually kind of works into a setup to what I was going to say, because I was going to tag up on what we were talking about with comedy and just bring up the fact that, I'm sorry, hands down, the funniest part of this movie is Dave Bautista. His every single line. I've never seen someone take a film and just steal it and run that far with it, because Drax is the best thing in this movie.
It's amazing to watch the evolution of Batista. Like, in the first Guardians, he's a little rough in spots, but his character is so out there and he's so committed to the stuff, his charisma carries him through. In this movie, he's made such large leaps and bound improvements in his acting skills that he was just fun to watch. And I think it actually made up for some of the lacks of what his character was up to. Like, he has some scenes with Mantis, and that's basically it. Besides that, he's just there to be funny. And goddamn, is he funny.
He has the role that we all assumed Baby Groot would have.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think that one of the big differences as far as the writing and directing goes is it wasn't until halfway through shooting the original that Gunn realized that Dave Bautista laughing is the funniest thing in the world. This was scripted with Dave Bautista laughing in every scene in mind. I think that made a significant difference.
It also, and just the beautiful contrast too, when he does have his dark moments, because this is a character who kind of plays it by sleeve, it feels like, but then they have the touching moment where he's talking about his past with Mantis, and just considering every other scene is him losing his fucking shit, laughing his ass off, it's such a stark contrast. You really buy into the emotional stakes that he's setting up in this conversation.
It's really strange that I care deeply about Drax the Destroyer.
Right?
Like on the ride home, I half jokingly thought to myself, God, it's weird to think 10 years from now we'll probably be watching the Drax movie. And then I realized, no, you could actually do a Drax movie.
I think they set their game up. In the first movie, I would say most of the characters you could do spin-offs with. It would take a little bit of work at convincing, but you could do it. Maybe not Gamora, because I feel like they didn't have enough going with that character. But in this movie, even Gamora, I feel like now has enough of a personality built in where I would be interested to see what she's up to on her own adventure.
Everyone has their own supporting cast now.
So I feel like Gamora, if you did a Gamora movie, you could almost just do a team movie where it's just Agents of Thanos, essentially, where you have like all these essentially like if you took all the bad guy bounty hunters that Darth Vader was going to have hunt down Han Solo in the Millennium Falcon, but just do that as a movie with Gamora as the lead, and have it be a prequel. I think that could actually kind of work.
I'd watch that.
You could do a movie that's just Rocket and Kraglin assembling a new team of Ravagers.
Isn't it amazing that Kraglin is now like a fully fledged, interesting character I don't mind seeing?
Who would have thought? Out of
Here's the
nowhere.
thing.
He had one line in the original, like, Captain's gonna teach stuff, and now he's like a real character I care about.
Here's the thing. I hope, against hope, that the setup for Volume 3 is Kraglin paints himself blue and becomes the new Yondu, who's just comic book Yondu with his bow and arrow. He was mastering that then.
It could happen. It could happen.
I just know James Gunn would be all for making his brother wax his chest and painting him blue.
I think he just does that on the weekends.
That's just a fun thing to do. But yeah, it's so weird, like Kraglin. Kraglin's like the new secret sauce for this movie. They introduce a ton of characters, all of a sudden it's just like Kraglin gets a ton of shit to do at the end. Why not? That's cool. I loved it.
And because it's a James Gunn movie, Kraglin is treated like he's Nick Fury or something. Like he is just as important as all of these other characters.
Which makes sense, because I mean, a lot of movies recognize, like, okay, these are the 5 characters with the lines, they're important, everyone else is a red shirt. In this one, it does reach out and say, hey, even though he's not one of our main dudes, he's not a Guardian of the Galaxy, he's still an actual, in universe, he's a character, he's a real human being, just like everyone else. He has feelings and motivations, blah, 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 blah. We should probably treat him with slightly more respect.
I think once you open the door of having a dramatic, really soul-searching and mournful character arc for a character like Yondu, you can pretty much do anything with any character in that movie because you open the bridge. You actually, build something to where it's sustainable to focus on, lesser characters. Even Mantis, I feel like, is just, she's the kind of, from the outset, you would think, okay, well, we have to add a new member of the team because that's just what you do in escalating sequels. That's just what you do, in your X-Men 2 and all that. You have to add more recognizable members of the cast. Mantis fills a specific role, but she also just exceeds that while being her own kind of thing and being her own kind of character, which is, I found interesting because her power set is actually kind of perfect when matched up with the Guardians, because the Guardians are so about just keeping everything close to the chest. They're just emotional reserves, just kind of banded together, and she just touches them, and all of a sudden she could just tell everyone what anyone is thinking at any time.
Well, it's great, just on a practical level, to see a superpower in one of these movies that isn't combat-based and actually furthers the character dynamic and not the action.
It's not shooting laser beams or anything.
And then becomes combat-based in the least predictable way imaginable. Go to sleep is one of the most dramatic line readings in this movie. Also
a brilliant way to solve the problem of too much shit happening at one time. Because during the entire time where she's crouched down, you don't have to have anything going on with Ego. You can focus exclusively on, the Aisha shit that's happening.
Also, Aisha has her own arcade system of machines. She has a VR cycle.
The slow dawn of, Gunn is doing arcade machines. And that scene was fucking brilliant.
How amazing is it that this film has 3 villains?
And it actually feels balanced. It doesn't feel like, oh, okay, God. There's cramming Sandman in here, too.
Yeah, this has been a thing with me for years. There is no rule saying that superhero movies fall apart if you have 2 or more villains. Oh. The thing is, you can't treat every villain like they're the main villain.
Yeah, it's the Dark Knight. You can make all sorts of villains work. They just have to have their own roles, and you need to actually make sure they fit into the story properly.
I would say an even better example of what James is talking about is Dick Tracy. Dick Tracy is the perfect, that's the archetype of what I want to see them do with one of these movies, is just essentially have an entire rogues gallery in the movie, but have them fill a specific purpose.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, my go-to is always Die Hard. If you really watch that movie, there's 8 villains in that thing, but there's only one Hans Gruber.
Well, that and all the red tape. Both of those are just outstanding, gigantic villains. Damn you, bureaucracies! And protocol?
Should just end there.
Just end. No,
wow.
Cannot.
Did you write that down?
How did you just pull that off of your head?
I don't know. The worst part was I wasn't even thinking about the joke I was making. I just wanted to try and find some way to wrap up that conversation so we could talk about my favorite part of the film, and that is Rooker.
Okay, was anyone going into this expecting this to be the Yondu movie?
Oh, goddamn, no.
Well, what's funny is, James Gunn fully prepared us for the fact that it was going to be, because he said, this is going to be Michael Rooker's finest hour. Multiple times during the production, during the promotion, during everything. He was like, this is going to be where Rooker shines. Rooker just becomes the benchmark for drama in this. He's the serious part of the movie.
Yeah, he's so good. And so many times you watch a movie with a really great character actor that's underused, and you just think, man, why are they only giving this guy 2 minutes of time and these shitty lines? This guy has the skills. Just let him fucking chew the scenes, or give him some real lines or a real character. And in the first movie, I love Yondu's character, but he's just a character in it. He's entertaining to watch, but that's it. He's entertaining in a movie full of entertaining characters.
Plus, he just kind of fills the Michael Rooker role, which is an archetype of itself, because this is more like whenever you see John Goodman be able to really tear it up and really go to town.
This is the 10 Cloverfield Lane kind of thing.
This is his 10 Cloverfield Lane. This is his, Oh Brother Where Art Thou or Big Lebowski moment. Like,
Yeah.
this is Rooker's just his moment.
This is what
And he
happens
just,
when you take great character actors and you say, let's give this guy material. Let's
And
not
he-
force him to do everything on his own. Let's actually help him out and prop him up and just, god damn, he takes the reins of that movie and he fucking drives it all the way.
and he is Mary Poppins, y'all.
Oh, God. Who would ever expect that would be the line that would just win over everyone's hearts?
It is his delight as he says it.
And it's the closest we get to Peter Quill saying, I love you, back to his adopted father. Like,
I know.
oh, yeah,
It's
he's
the
cool.
look on his face, that delivery. It's so good.
And the pose. I mean, let's face it, like, there are a lot of moving things that make that just the best meme that's ever come out of this year so far.
I also love that he lands and they do like the Avengers sweep around the team at that point. And you see the shit-eating grin on Yondu's face as everything blows up like he thinks he personally did it. Even though it was Gamora, or it was Nebula who like used her arm battery power to power the machine so it could blow everyone up. Michael
There's
Rooker basically like made the spaceship spin around in a circle and he's like, I did it, y'all, look at me.
There's something so magical about seeing the Avengers pan around for the Guardians.
And not only that, but like, we went into, like, I feel like everyone who went into this movie basically thought, okay, Rooker's gonna come in, like, Yondu's gonna come in, and he's gonna become, like, the new permanent member of the team, and he's gonna be
Oh yeah.
in Avengers Infinity War, and, like, he's gonna be, like, just in future installments, because he and Nebula are just permanent fixtures now. That's not what happens at all. He gets,
No.
like, maybe 5 seconds of time as an actual member of the Guardians of the Galaxy, and then dies historic.
Well, it's like Rocket makes him a member of the team to essentially honor him before his death. And that death is so great because there's no hinting at it throughout the film. You don't really feel like that's what's coming for Yondu. So when the death actually happens, it really feels like this wasn't how his character arc was necessarily supposed to go, but it's the right way for it to go.
Well, that's actually what Gunn said in an interview, is that the entire time he was writing the script, he was like, I was just resisting the urge so badly because it was calling to me. I knew it had to happen, but I wanted to put it off because I can't do that to Rooker. Because, I mean, it's James Gunn and Michael Rooker. They're practically brothers.
Yeah,
But-
it's going to suck in 3 when we don't have Yondu as a main character.
Unless we get him as a ghost.
Yeah, I think that too.
Ooh.
But man, the ending with Yondu's death ties everything together so perfectly, and it really finishes out the Rocket Raccoon stuff. And goddamn, I actually think like they had a better grasp on the story when it came to dealing with Rocket's emotional issues and baggage than they did even with Peter and his father. Like that introspective part where Rocket Raccoon realizes being an asshole because he's called out by Yondu and he's kind of forced to really address what his issue is. Just, it works so well. And at the end, when all the Ravagers show up, and I mean, sure, it might be a little cheesy, but, you know, he has that moment with Star-Lord where he mentions, like, of course they came back. Ah, God, it's a tearjerker.
It's not cheesy. It is beautiful. Everything
It really is beautiful.
Everything about those last 15 minutes are like even beyond the MCU, even beyond superhero movies, it's just some of the most amazingly well done send-off pieces to a character I think I've seen in a long time.
I just want to point out, Yondu has a better send-off than Han Solo.
It's true. It's,
But going back, I think that's a perfect example of what I was talking about earlier with the idea of Act 1 in these stories being set up and Act 2 being exploration. The original fully sets up, okay, this is Rocket. This is what a piece of shit he is and how crazy he is. And this movie is just an exploration of, okay, if you were Rocket and were that crazy, how badly would that destroy everything around you? And I love that they're not afraid to do that, because it could have been very easy to just have Rocket be a crazy asshole, and that's funny, and that's it.
yeah, never address it. Never go into why he's a crazy asshole.
Yeah, they never go into the sitcom pitfall of just characters being horrible and insane for no reason because it's funny. And
He's
that's
Kramer,
going on
he's just
forever.
wacky.
He's called out in the first act by Peter. Like he's called out not only the first time, but then later on, like a scene later where it's doubled down on it. And it's like, oh, he's actually serious. It's not just them two bickering. It's It's Peter recognizing that Rocket is insanely destructive and is the entire reason that any of this is going down and all of this went horrible.
I would
And
also
Rocket
like to
realizes
say,
that too.
anytime they have Michael Rooker do yell acting, it's like he's yelling directly at my soul. Like in both movies, like in the first one where he's like, it's in here! It's in here! And he's just grabbing Star-Lord and just smacking his chest. It's like, oh shit. Oh god, I better pay attention. In this movie where he's having like the yell acting bit, where he's talking to Rocket Raccoon, he's basically saying like, hey, I know you're a piece of shit, because I'm a piece of shit. It's like, oh damn it. I feel like he's telling me I'm a piece of shit, because he's a piece of shit. He's probably right.
He is.
Oh.
And what I liked about the resolution for Rocket, the resolution for a lot of the characters, it's very realistically done. It's not in a very movie where it's like, well, Rocket is going to forever not be an asshole anymore. Like, no, it's more of a personal understanding of, oh, that's why I do these things, and I have to remember that these people actually care about me.
Like, none of them actually end up in a better place by the end.
It was an interesting theme, playing into the ego thing and all that. Interesting theme to see in a sci-fi blockbuster superhero movie, which is more of a theme of why are you what you are?
Yeah.
And realize exactly what you are to learn from it. You don't necessarily need to change. Just figure out what you've done and then what's actually around you. All because you know what's around you. Like, you've seen the Guardians in the first movie and even the beginning of this movie call themselves family. But what are you actually appreciating that fact, or are you just saying it? And even with the Yondu being Peter's father, there's a sense in the first movie that Peter kind of understands that Yondu is technically his father. Like, that's just something you get in the first film. I remember thinking that after watching it. But it's not until here that Peter actually has it click for him to the point where he appreciates it and understands it and realizes he actually doesn't need to search for other things. Everything's here. He doesn't need to try to be something else.
I think also that kind of touches on something that I have a problem with, and oddly enough, going into third superhero movies, which is they always feel like whenever you get to a second installment of like a Spider-Man film or a Batman movie, there's always the exploration that's starting to go into why something is. Like James said, like that's the whole thesis of what a good second movie is supposed to be. But a third movie should be the resolution of that and sort of the coming to terms with that portion. And that's when I don't feel like Spider-Man 3 or The Dark Knight Rises or any of these movies that go on to do terribly really do, because they don't take any of the lessons that the other movie had and apply them. They just do their own thing, and it becomes this completely alienated thing that has almost nothing to do with the other two installments. That's why the third movie, Curse, is so prevalent in the DNA of those movies, because they just go off script. It's like, you have to think of it as one continuous script. You can't think of it as three scripts.
Well, Rises and Spider-Man 3 in particular go out of their way to defy things in the previous films. Like, Spider-Man 3 is all about Peter learning nothing from the past two Spider-Man movies.
Well, a bad third movie is all about deconstructing the myth of the first movie and ignoring the second movie.
Exactly.
I also feel like that's a big failing of both Iron Man 3 and X-Men The Last Stand, which is they don't really, like, and less with Iron Man 3 because Iron Man 2 has nothing to really add, but Iron Man 3 just completely ignores anything with Iron Man that Tony's learned, and that's kind of what the problem has been with Tony ever since. And that's why he's kind of a deeply, deeply flawed character now in the MCU. With Guardians 2, though, that's my whole point in bringing up the third movie thing is that is done in this movie to a full tilt. Like, they do the beginning of that resolution that Mike was talking about, and then they actually pay it off. And you don't actually see that in a lot of second movies, because sometimes they leave that as a cliffhanger. Sometimes they leave it as something that is the beginning of a larger journey that never gets paid off. Like, the only time I can think of it being paid off is Captain America Civil War. But with Guardians 2, this is like, okay, these are three movies, but it's in two of them. Like, you get enough story to fit three movies, but they're two movies. Which makes the idea of a third one almost worrying, but at the same time very interesting, because it's almost like they have new fertile ground to cover.
Well, they've got the same talent coming back, so that's very exciting. I like that continuity, and there's not going to be the back and forth of will they, won't they.
Yeah.
Plus, they do have some setups with Aisha and Adam Warlock, so they do have some through lines they can carry through on.
And the interesting thing is that because of the things Gunn has decided to do with the characters in this film essentially has the structure of that indie film where everyone has a weird, wild weekend, and at the end they become whole.
Oh my god, it's flirting with disaster in space. Now I think about it, this is a fucking David O. Russell movie, isn't it?
Yep. And now that those characters are whole, Gunn's essentially had the characters earn truly being the Guardians of the Galaxy, both for Infinity War and what Volume 3 will be. And I think that was an interesting way to take the second film, which is we're not going to do the Guardians battling another villain or something like that. We're just going to put these characters through a personal crucible, and those character quirks and defects we introduced in the first film, they're going to work that shit out here in the second film. And then they're going to be ready to actually do that plot you want to see them do.
I think that's a really interesting idea, because at the end of Age of Ultron, the Avengers haven't earned Infinity War, but at the end of Civil War they have.
Yeah.
I mean, and another thing just with that is that Infinity War is apparently going to feature the Guardians many years down the line from Volume 2, which kind of tags up on the idea that Groot has become a teenager at this point, which is the one of the 5 scenes in the post-credits. And I actually think that's a brave move, because you can take these characters and say, okay, what are they like in the future now?
I do love how they're the one characters you can do a time jump with, because we don't know when the hell this is.
We kind of do. They introduced the first scene in this movie says it happens in 1980, and then in the very opening with Guardians it says it happens 34 years later.
Yeah, Guardians takes place the year it comes out, and this takes place 6 months later? 3 months later?
Pretty much, yeah.
Which is an interesting change of pace from the other Marvel movies, which more or less take place in real time.
Yeah, it's been very interesting.
Which is also, interesting because a couple of years go by between films just for production schedules.
There is no time and space.
Now they're kind of breaking the mold with that between Guardians and Spider-Man.
So one other thing we definitely have to touch on, because I think this is what got everyone excited for a sequel in the first place. Awesome Mix Volume 2.
Do you agree that the music is somehow better used in this movie than it was in the original?
Oh, much. It's
100%.
fascinating how it's used.
And I love the callbacks, because in the first movie, they tried to get through the soundtrack, and, a lot of time, I don't know, did we ever revisit a song after it was played in the first movie?
I don't think so.
I think there was one, I believe the song that was played in the beginning that Peter's listening to as a kid plays again whenever, he sees the vision of his mother.
Okay, that makes sense. But in this one, there's a couple of times where you get callbacks to songs, and it works so well. I hands down think this is the best use of Fleetwood Mac in cinema history. The chain coming back to play right as Peter kind of figures what the fuck he's going on with his family and his what Brian do.
The chain being used as a fucking dramatic moment is fucking amazing.
And I mean, Gunn is pretty on the nose for the thematic weight of the song being pretty much equal to what's happening in the movie. But I'm not mad about that, because it still isn't as bad as just saying what you want to say. You have to at least pay attention to the song and the lyrics to get the meaning. And with the chain, it's that perfect idea, if you don't love me now, you'll never love me again. You can never break the chain. And that idea that Peter's love has been betrayed by his father, he's essentially broken the chain. It's very literal reading of the song, but it works so goddamn well, because it informs you 100% of the emotions that are running through these characters as soon as it hits.
Also, we would be remiss if we did not acknowledge that Kurt Russell said aloud the lyrics to Brandy in space.
And explain the meaning of the song.
Yeah.
The most beautiful song ever written by humans.
Not to step away from the soundtrack for too long, how fucking amazing is Russell?
This
The
may
way
be
he finds
better.
his lines, when he's reading the Brandy stuff, goddamn, that's gotta be hard.
Oh, yeah.
This might be a better performance than Hateful Eight.
I just find Russell's performance amazing because he's finally done something he's never done before. He has made a character I don't actually like.
That is impressive.
Even in the fucking Death...
Hateful Eight.
No. The
No,
Death
car
Wish.
movie.
Oh, Death Proof?
Death Proof. I was gonna say Death Wish. Death Proof. Like, even his character who there is pathetic and slimy and weird and a serial killer, you still go, well, it's Kurt Russell. He's fun.
We all love Stuntman Mike.
We all love Stuntman Mike. We can't help it. We get mad at the end when he gets his face stomped. Whereas in this movie, it's like, no, Peter should have blasted his fucking face off. What a dick.
Oh my, can you imagine if the villain for Guardians 3 is Tom Hanks?
My God.
And
Tom Hanks as Jason.
I could see that, actually. It's the only way I think Gunn would actually be able to do that character and not feel weird. Because he hates Jason. More than anybody else, James Gunn hates Jason so much.
I will always love that immediately following the release of Guardians, James Gunn released a press release saying, "Don't worry, his dad isn't Jason."
I just want to say, you all are being very nice with the pronunciation of that character's name. It's not actually that cool. It's literally Jason.
Dumb.
Also, we were all wrong
We were,
about
yeah.
Star-Lord's dad. It was not Star Fox.
It was not, yeah.
God damn.
Made sense to me. Now I'm just imagining, though, Tom Hanks playing Adam Warlock.
I could see that.
Tom
would do that.
Tom Hanks with his billowing hair.
And he's
Old Tom
ripped.
Hanks.
Just glowing.
That is funny to think. I'm 100% certain Adam Warlock will be stunt casted.
Oh, definitely.
Okay,
Okay.
this is our new Pete's dad. Who do you think is going to be Adam Warlock?
Okay. Colin Hanks. I'm going to put that out there. I think he's going
Ooh.
to go for something. I think the universe has heard us, and James Gunn is going to be influenced to the point where he's going to cast Colin Hanks as Adam Warlock.
That's a really interesting choice.
Okay, here's my suggestion because he's worked with Gunn before. Kevin Bacon. Because imagine the joke of that for the third movie.
Okay, before I say mine, I want to say, James is right. That's going to happen.
Gunn cannot resist them battling Footloose.
Simon Pegg.
Ooh, that'd be interesting.
Just to picture beautiful gold Simon Pegg
With hair.
floating
Simon-
in space.
Simon Pegg, I'm amazed Pegg has not been a member of the MCU before. I
It's
feel
very
like he'd
shocking.
be knocking on their door. Or Nick Frost, either of those guys. Like, I feel like they'd be just begging to get into one of those movies.
Ross is
Maybe
Peggy
Edgar Wright said they couldn't.
Because the Ant-Man thing. That's, oh,
You want to betray me?
Whoa.
Can you imagine if Simon Pegg was J. Jonah Jameson? Like, that's who they cast as the follow-up to J.K. Simmons. It's just
Okay.
Simon Pegg yelling
Awesome.
at Peter Parker's face.
That would be the only way that'd be acceptable to recast.
And ripped Peg, too.
God,
And
I
he's
gotta
still
pick-
Ginger. Like, they don't give him a wig or anything.
No. All right, I gotta pick somebody. Oh boy. This is way out of left field here, guys, but Freddie Prinze Jr.
I feel like Freddie Prinze Jr. is going to end up in one of these movies.
Eventually, yeah. And there's
Specifically in
the weird,
Guardians.
the weird tangential Scooby-Doo connection to James Gunn. Like, I feel like they have to kind of know each other at this point in their lives.
I think so. I feel like Freddie Prinze Jr. would have gone out of his way to meet James Gunn at some point because of Scooby-Doo.
Well, Freddie Prinze Jr. is on Disney's retainer now because he's a member of the Star Wars canon. So there's a connection. Like, you can kind of make connections to where that's kind of likely to happen.
Okay, speaking of Scooby-Doo and that connection, I'm calling it now. Volume 3 will feature Matthew Lillard as Terrax.
Look, Lillard's gonna get a career bump. He is, I should say, one of the recurring characters in the new Twin Peaks. And he actually gets stuff to do in there that's like real acting.
Which is
Well, I
always
think-
weird.
The only thing is, if Matthew Lillard plays Terrax, he doesn't get to be my pick for him in the MCU, which is I want him to play the Scorpion.
Ooh,
That is
how cool would that be?
Just imagine him
I
in
can
an
see that.
God,
just imagine him in an
Scorpion.
exosuit battling Tom Holland.
Oh, we're talking exosuit? I was thinking like the original green, like,
Oh, he's just like painted
Spandex.
green.
yeah, not like the Robo Scorpion costume, like the original 1916 Scorpion, where
Like-
he's just like in a green bodysuit with a giant tail.
So he has the backpack.
Ah.
Stop calling me names, Jameson. Calling me names.
I'm dead set for Lillard to become the Scorpion now. That's just
Until you said it, it never occurred. No, he's Gargan.
Can you imagine? Jonah just pulls out a gun and shoots him. Scorpion's just on the ground. Oh, jeez. Oh, God. Venom's gonna be so mad at me.
And it's Tom Hardy, so that's really terrifying.
Though I just realized that if Matt Lillard were to join the MCU, so then that's Matt Lillard in the MCU. That's Seth Green in the MCU. That means Dak Shepard would have to join the MCU. So you have the full cast without a paddle. Now, do we want to go down this route?
No.
Dak Shepard would be Nova.
Oh my God!
Can you imagine that?
Marvel, please send your bank loads of money to Box Office Pulp, care of Cody Elft at
We're doing the work for you, Marvel.
this point. Hey, if you give me a call, I'm sure I could recommend a few people Cillian Murphy should play.
You know what? Instead of sending it to our PO box, send it to twitter.com/boxofficepulp, and remember to follow us on Facebook at Box Office Pulp.
Promotion.
Facebook.com/Box Office Pulp Podcast. We're on Twitter at Box Office Pulp. We can also find us on, oh wait, that's not till later. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, we just got jettisoned into the ending. Do we have anything else we want to cover here, or are we done?
I have one thing to add.
Okay, throw that out quick, because the ending's closing.
Oh, it's
Push
like
it back.
Scooby-Doo haunted house.
Get
It's
it with
closing in.
fire.
You want
Threshold's
Cillian-
bearing down, guys. Gotta hurry.
If you're determined to have Cillian Murphy in these movies, Uatu the Watcher. Because apparently that can happen now.
Okay,
That could be a thing.
that is something I legitimately want to talk about because I feel like we all have the same reaction. Why was there a 100% comic book accurate set of Watchers in the movie?
And is Stan Lee technically one of them, or he's just recounting his tales to the Watchers?
Remember, he's the FedEx guy from the end of Civil War because Gunn wanted continuity. I should say,
Somehow he ended up in space.
the best Stan Lee cameo ever.
Oh, nothing will ever beat it. Nothing will ever beat this.
And the shock, how did they get the rights to the Watchers?
Well, Feige explained it. They don't have the rights to Uatu, but the Watchers as a concept is shared between Fox and Marvel.
that's stupid.
That's
It
really
is
weird and
stupid.
stupid, yeah.
But it
It's-
works.
It's kind of
That's
like how they don't have the Super Scroll, but they have the Skrulls.
Yeah.
That's like saying we don't have Kang, but we have a Mortis.
What is the point? That's like if DC said, we don't have Hawkman, but we have the Thanagarians.
and
Essentially.
Hawk Girl. So who cares?
But I did not expect them to just look like the Watchers.
That was one of the most. I'm not even exaggerating when I say that is one of the most surreal moments of my life. CGI comic accurate Watchers.
Photorealistic.
Stan Lee.
With
So-
their blue capes.
With the MCU, we've all accepted at this point they're going to be inspired by the comics, but it's very rare we're going to get the actual comics translated on screen. To get the real deal randomly in like a weird cameo, it's like, what the fuck just happened?
That was my reaction in the first movie when the Celestials showed up.
Yeah.
Like, well, we're going into Jack Kirby country.
We are just in Jack Kirby and Jim Starlin's brains right now.
Not
I
good.
can only imagine how weird it's going to be when Thanos is badassing around in Infinity War.
Yeah.
Like, when you think about it, Uatu the Watcher and Cosmo the Space Dog are like the two most visually perfect translations in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
And Howard the Duck.
And Howard the Duck.
Got it.
Shouting up some
Howard-
Robo Broads.
Howard coming back was amazing.
What a weird tease.
I just like how, yeah, Howard's, that's can't, like, it's not an after credit scene now. Howard's out there, voiced by Seth Green. Seth Green is officially Howard the Duck.
And one day he will land on Earth and become a private eye.
Don't forget that Wonder Man is also technically canon, even though he's removed from the film.
I still want Nathan Fillion to come back and become Simon Williams, aka Wonder Man.
I like how Gunn went out of his way to go, no, it is canon that Nathan Fillion is Simon Williams, and we will find a place to put him in so he is further enscotched into canon.
I think that's the deal. If you make Marvel $800 million 2 times, you get to put Nathan Fillion in whatever role you want.
And here's the
Wonder
thing.
Man, the Netflix series.
And here's the thing, because nobody likes Wonder Man, Nathan Fillion is perfect because Nathan Fillion is likable.
Look, I want Wonder Man to do the only thing Wonder Man should ever do. Be introduced. And immediately have his mind trapped in the brain of the Vision. Oh!
Can you imagine, like, if
I love the synchronized screaming between you guys so much. Like, I want the show to end right on fucking there.
We've been friends for a very long time. We've realized this.
If you notice, that's kind of a running gag.
Anytime I hear synchronized screaming, I just think like, yep, that's the end of the show. Everything else after that can just get lopped off.
We do end the show very often after synchronized screaming.
Oh, we got a movie sign!
Oh.
But yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Box Office Pulp, recommends it.
Box
One
Office
of Marvel's
Pulp.
best, and that's saying something.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Box Office Pulp wants to know if anybody else was sexually aroused by the appearance of the Watchers.
Box Office Pope is a bit of a cosmic exhibitionist.
Box Office
And he
Pulp.
knows.
Box Office Pulp wants to dip their heads in oil and rub them all over his body.
Box Office Pulp is ripe. There's your deep cut, everybody go home.
And like that, he's gone.
Since you brought it up, I just want to say, what an amazing comedy joke the fucking ripeness thing was.
It was like vaudeville comedy.
And that's like what I was saying earlier. I love how Guardians is the one movie in the Marvel Universe that has comedy.
You get a little bit in Ant-Man.
You do.
I actually get a lot in Ant-Man. Ant-Man tried to be funnier.
I mean, it's
And I
comedy.
would say it mostly worked. Ant-Man's pretty funny.
But you don't have Karen Gillan's deadpan delivery.
As a cyborg lady.
I have
God,
to
Karen
say-
Gillan was so good in this.
Yes, I was kind of iffy on her Nebula in the first movie, but in this movie it removed all doubts.
That fight
Whenever I
scene.
see her not being in Doctor Who, I kind of get a, alright, let's see what happens here. This just bowled me over, like she was wonderful in the role.
I was amazed that I actually really care about Nebula now.
Right? Oh my god, how did they manage to find a way to make me give it a shit about Nebula?
I just love how this retroactively makes Guardians a better movie.
Oh yeah.
Considering all you know about Nebula and Yondu, especially with Yondu stuff, like there was an entire storyline going on in between scenes of the first movie that you weren't even aware of.
I was rewatching the first one just a couple days ago, and actually knowing the Nebula stuff, like how it shook out in Volume 2, it's definitely in Gunn's head when he was writing the first one.
Yeah, it feels like all of this was in his head. It wasn't like he just like, with Christopher Nolan, I feel like every time he did a Batman movie, he's like, well shit, there went all my ideas. Time to start over. Whereas with Gunn, it feels like he actually has several movies planned out, and if he gets to them, cool, he'll explore them.
My whole thing is just, I feel like the first one is enriched by the fact that Sylvester Stallone is out there as one of the original Guardians.
And a robotic head, as
voiced
that
Miley-
person for some reason.
Yeah.
Why Miley Cyrus? Does he know her personally?
Miley Cyrus had like, what, one line in the movie?
It's really weird. I mean, I'm still confused. Why was Michael Rosenbaum the Night King?
Right?
And
Also-
only get one line. Like, he's silent throughout the movie. Until
Yeah. And the fact that they wasted an after credits scene on their group, like, are they trying to say that we'll eventually get a Ravager spinoff with Stallone? Or is that just a weird, like, hey, I've got these guys, I gotta use them?
Or in part 3? I don't know. I don't know what Gunn's planning.
I mean,
I
for
think
God's-
Gunn just really wanted that scene.
I mean, Ving Rhames.
Yeah. There's some big names in there. It feels like too many big people are involved in that scene for it to not have an impact later on. But I don't know what they're gonna do with it. Like, I can't see Marvel funding a Ravager spin-off movie.
Well, the Ravagers have had a part in both of the first two movies. I imagine they'll still
Yeah.
have a part. And
Well-
those are the only real members of the Ravagers that we have now.
Right, yeah, they literally killed off all of Yondu's faction besides Kraglin.
Yeah.
Also, just so I understand this, I mean, they can hand-wave it later. Is the Milano totally gone now?
I guess so.
I mean, they didn't destroy the original totally. Like, Rocket was fixing it. It's still in that plant.
They could go
pick it
back
up.
for it, fix it.
Yeah, but they also have, like, Yondu's warship they could just drive around. Does that mean Kraglin's part of their crew now, or is he going to go off and make his own spin? There's so many questions. I got to see 3.
Kraglin is their Caliban now.
I mean, I hope they keep him around and he's just like part of their crew, but he's not an official Guardian.
Kraglin kills Thanos.
You joke. If Gunn was directing Infinity War, that's exactly what would
We should all put bets on now who's going to kill Thanos.
Oh, I dead seriously think that it's going to be Bucky, fulfilling his destiny as the cosmic assassin.
I like how James is literally the only person who still loves that idea and won't let it go despite comics abandoning that several years ago. Stupidly, I agree with James. Wholeheartedly.
How beautiful is that idea, though? Bucky has no place on Earth after he's alienated everyone. So he has to go to the stars, being the Winter Soldier of the cosmos.
The man on the wall.
That's going to be the most interesting thing for me to keep track of, like, which guy actually gets the final blow. Because they're not going to have all of the Avengers go in and punch him at the same time.
That would be amazing.
That would just
It
all
kind of would
just
be.
fucking Ant-Man punch him.
Right?
No. Here's what I think. You're gonna have Infinity War, and like nobody's gonna really know any plot details until we finally go and see the movie.
Mhm.
And then we go in to see the movie, and everything goes like how you would imagine it. Like every single member of the Avengers gets their moment to shine. Like Thanos gets a big moment and kind of usurps them. Captain America gets his big heroic speech. Like all this stuff comes to a head. Like Captain America and Iron Man's factions make up and become the like true blue Avengers. And then a portal opens. And outstretched comes a rubber fist that punches Thanos across the face. Then you hear the words, "It's clobbering time." Michael Chiklis jumps in.
The OG version, too.
And somehow, like, there's an alternate universe version of Chris Evans that comes in as just fully flamed on as Human Torch.
Kate Mara is randomly Sue Storm, though.
Like, without Adam Warlock in the mix, I don't know, they're setting Nebula up to really want this, so maybe her?
I feel like, no joking, probably it's going to be Scarlet Witch taking control of the stones and using them to kill Thanos.
Yeah.
Or
She's got the power.
I don't know. To be honest, like, I felt like this movie was kind of setting up the idea that Nebula's actually going to carry out her promise of killing her father.
She's definitely going to have a huge chance.
Drax and his revenge against Thanos.
Drax may have forgotten by now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Drax just kind of had his moment and he was thrown into some sludge.
I also feel like the Vision is kind of being set up a little bit to be our new Adam Warlock.
A little bit.
But I also feel like he's going to die in the first movie, so Thanos can get the first gem. So I don't see him getting the killing blow, considering I think he's going to be dead meat before that point.
Well, that's when you bring in the soul of Wonder Man to bring him back to life.
Oh god, that'd be amazing. I honestly am going to be so bad if they decide to just officially kill off the Vision. Because he's a side character who's never going to have his own movie, but man, I love having him around.
Well, they can't kill off the Vision because they already killed off Jarvis, and it'd be kind of cheap.
I think if Vision dies from having the stone removed, it's only going to be a temporary thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I think most of the deaths will just be unwritten at the end. He'll be dead for a majority of part 2.
I'm dead certain somebody big's going to die for part 2, though.
I think they're going to kill him at the end of part 1 to get people interested in part 2.
Somebody's going to die somewhere.
Yeah.
You know who should die? Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah.
He's just fucking annihilated by the Infinity Gauntlet. Ah!
Marvel just decides to kill Spider-Man because of all of Sony's bullshit movies.
That'd be kind of funny.
And then they buy Venom.
You can't have Tom Hardy anymore.
You don't deserve nice things.
This is Box Office Pulp Guy, and this has been a Pulp Podcast production. Now please, 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 put a gun in my mouth and pull the trigger and say goodnight.
And now, on with the show.
This meeting will come to order. The Legion of Pulp is now in session. In a moment, iTunes... Yes, Quizmotron.
I was wondering, Emperor Palpatine, if I could perhaps...
Box Office Pulp thinks we need a few items that pawn on the black market.
Box Office Pulp Guy, you have a podcast dedicated to movie analysis. Pinhead, your pleasure puzzles are deadly. Isaac, you've got corn.
Gone?
What more do you need?
How about a nuclear warhead?
What?
All other supervillains have them.
With a nuclear warhead, I shall leave all other podcasts to tear themselves apart with paranoia.
Box Office Pulp wants a magic lasso to hang himself with.
Can I get a ship in a bottle kit?
I demand more corn.
To make my own ship in a bottle. Oh, enough of this. The hell do I look like, Santa Claus? We're wasting valuable time. Right now, my Pope drones are rewriting Apple's code to make our podcast #1 on iTunes.
Excuse me, Emperor.
Quizmotron, what is it?
All Quizmotron wants is pants. A decent pair of pants.
Darth Vader wants pants too.
Order!
Glory to the corn.
Pain is not supposed to be this complicated.
Tune in next week at PulpPodcastNetwork.wordpress.com.
I don't even know how I deal with any of you on a daily basis.